My name is Daniel Meister, and today I will be giving a presentation on business etiquette in China. To begin, I want to start covering some of the main points that you need in order to successfully conduct business in China. First, the topic of conversation will be greetings. Then we will move on to communication. Next, importance of time. Then gift giving. And finally, proper business attire for any successful business meeting in China. So first, like I said, we'll cover the greetings that are acceptable in Chinese business. These values are similar to those of the United States. So typically, a nod and a smile is an acceptable way to greet your counterpart or be greeted in return. Another common way to greet your counterpart is a handshake, but it's extremely important to realize that your Chinese counterpart should always initiate the handshake. Otherwise, it can be perceived as aggressive, so always let your Chinese counterpart initiate any handshake that you engage in. Continuing on to communication styles that are successful in business in China. First thing that's important to understand is that the Chinese find it very difficult to use the word no. So them saying yes is not necessarily an affirmative answer to any question or comment that you have. That's extremely important to understand. It's just hard for them to say no. Continuing on, just like here in the United States, small talk is appreciated and accepted. It's encouraged as a way to begin a conversation and even carry on a conversation, just making it a little bit lighter and taking the focus maybe off the business in the beginning. This is extremely important to understand. In Chinese culture, political conversations are never a good idea. Specifically those on the issues of human rights. It's very offensive to engage in these types of conversations during business meetings in China, and it's just unacceptable. It can really become offensive for your counterpart. Finally, as for communication, it's always a good idea to attempt to speak the native language, but it's important to understand that in Chinese language, there are several words and phrases that can be easily misconstrued or misheard. If you are to misspeak, it can lead to a breakdown in language and in turn a breakdown in the business communications. So that's extremely important. If you're going to speak their language, at least be confident and use words that you can really understand. Now continuing on to the importance of time. This is another thing that's fairly similar to American culture, but the Chinese really do put a heavy value on time, and therefore it's extremely strict. So you should always expect to arrive early to a business setting. Typically 10 minutes is acceptable, because arriving late can be a sign of disrespect to your counterpart, and you always want to avoid that if you can. So always try to arrive early and be respectful of your counterpart's time. Next, we'll move on to gift giving. Gift giving is acceptable in Chinese business and an encouraged practice under the right circumstances. The first thing to be wary of in Chinese culture, colors have very deep meanings. So a color in particular that you want to stay away from if you are giving a gift is yellow, because it can be perceived or taken in context as a funeral or death. So that's something you want to try to watch out for. Another thing to watch out for is certain items that you could gift in American culture that would not be taken in a positive context in Chinese culture. Specifically, clocks represent death, so you want to watch out for that. Green hats is another one that took me by surprise, but it actually represents unfaithfulness in a marriage. Finally, chrysanthemums, that's another thing you want to watch out for, because that has a connotation of a funeral. So you do want to try to stay away from that if you are giving flowers as a gift. The final point when you are giving gifts is to make sure you don't overdo it. It's important not to, because your Chinese counterpart could be obligated then to return the favor, and that can lead to a breakdown in business as well. So don't overdo, and you'll probably be in good shape. Continuing on to proper business attire, very important in Chinese culture. Men should dress conservatively. Typically, this means wearing a suit and a tie, and always subtle colors, no bright or vibrant colors. And continuing back to the gift giving, always watch out for the colors that you're wearing. Yellow, like I said, is one in particular that can be represent something negative, so maybe don't wear the yellow tie. Now, women should avoid short sleeves and high heels. This is very important. You want to show as little skin as possible in a business setting. In Chinese culture, it can be seen as offensive to your counterpart, so always watch out for that. Another tip, jeans may be acceptable in some American settings, but never acceptable in a business setting in China. So never wear jeans. Also, you should be aware of certain colors and what they represent, as I have already mentioned. So to recap, you should be aware of certain colors and their representations. You should always be conservative in regards to what you're wearing and how your appearance may be perceived by your Chinese counterpart. And you should always refrain from giving large gifts. Like I said, it can lead to your Chinese counterpart feeling obligated to return that favor. And the most important thing, as is the most important thing here in the United States, always arrive early and be respectful of your counterpart's time. It's very important and something you want to watch out for. If you follow these guidelines and tips, you will be able to conduct business in China and do so successfully.